When people ask what makes peoples different, the question sounds simple, but almost every word in it is slippery. Peoples can mean nations, ethnicities, ancestry groups, populations, cultures, or even categories imposed from outside. Those labels overlap, but not neatly. And if we mistake a social label for a clear scientific category, the whole analysis can go wrong before it begins. Still, differences between human groups are real. Different populations, communities, and countries can show different average appearances, health patterns, customs, economic outcomes, and test results. The hard part is explaining those differences without collapsing into a single cause. That is where simple stories become misleading and often dangerous. Human outcomes usually reflect interacting effects of biology, environment, institutions, history, education, health, and culture, all tangled together. A powerful example is North and South Korea. For many generations, people on both sides shared closely similar ancestry, language, and historical roots. Then, within a few decades, they diverged sharply. Why? Not because their genes suddenly split into separate human types, but because institutions, ideology, economic systems, nutrition, healthcare, information access, and political violence pulled life in radically different directions. That case is a warning against easy explanations. Human lives can change dramatically within historical time, far faster than evolution usually works. Biological differences between populations do exist. Some are obvious invisible traits, but these differences are usually better understood as adaptations to environment and history than as rankings of human worth or ability. Skin color is one of the clearest examples. It is strongly linked to ultraviolet radiation. Darker skin offers better protection in intense sunlight. Lighter skin can help vitamin D production, where sunlight is weaker. That is adaptation, not hierarchy. The same caution applies to facial features and hair texture. These traits reflect local evolution, migration, and chance. Human variation does not come packaged in hard biological borders. It appears as gradients, mixtures, clusters, and exceptions. People move, populations mix, traits recombine, and categories blur. Everyday ideas about race often suggest sharper divisions than biology supports. Height shows especially well how biology and environment interact. Height is partly genetic, yes, but it also responds strongly to childhood nutrition, disease burden, hygiene, physical strain, and medical care. When average height differs between groups, living conditions may be doing much of the work. A population can grow taller over time without any dramatic genetic transformation, simply because children are healthier, better fed, and less exposed to illness. Sometimes culture changes biology itself by changing selection pressures. Lactase persistence is a classic case. In some populations, people developed cultural practices around keeping animals and consuming milk. Once milk use became common, the ability to digest lactose into adulthood could become biologically advantageous. So culture came first, and genes followed. This is gene-culture co-evolution, not nature versus nurture, but nature and nurture reshaping each other. Other adaptations make the same point. High-altitude populations may show different physiological strategies for coping with thin air. The sickle cell gene can offer protection against malaria while also imposing serious health costs. Evolution does not design perfect solutions. It produces trade-offs and compromises shaped by local conditions. Population genetics adds another important caution. Most human genetic variation exists within groups, not neatly between them. That does not mean populations are identical or that ancestry is meaningless. It means the common assumption that everyday racial categories map cleanly onto deep biological divisions is much too crude. Modern genetics often reveals blurrier boundaries than people expect. The most heated arguments usually begin when the topic turns from visible traits to intelligence, skills, and social outcomes. Here, caution matters even more. Group differences in IQ scores or other test results may exist, but tests measure limited performances under specific conditions. They do not capture total human ability, dignity, creativity, moral worth, or innate group superiority. Treating them as if they do is a major mistake. Another major error involves heritability. A trait can be highly heritable within one population under one set of conditions. And that still tells us very little about why groups differ from one another. This is one of the most common confusions in public debate. Variation within a group is not the same as variation between groups. You cannot simply take a finding about individuals in one environment and use it to explain average differences across social, ethnic, or national categories. Why not? Because environmental confounders are everywhere. Education quality, early childhood conditions, stress, poverty, sleep, pollutants, language, health, discrimination, familiarity with testing, and measurement bias can all affect outcomes. Ignore those factors, and statistics start to look like destiny. But they are not destiny. They are data points embedded in social realities. One of the strongest reasons to resist simple genetic explanations for measured cognitive differences is the Flynn effect. Substantial rises in IQ scores over decades in many countries. Genes do not change that quickly across entire populations. So if test performance can move that much in historical time, then environment, schooling, complexity of daily life, health, and other changing conditions must matter a great deal. The careful conclusion, then, is not that genes are irrelevant. Genes likely contribute to cognitive variation among individuals within some populations. But the evidence on the causes of differences between social, ethnic, or national groups is much more uncertain. That uncertainty matters. Honest analysis should preserve it, not pretend the science is more settled than it is. The same warning applies to national wealth and development. No single cause explains why some countries become rich and others remain poor. Geography matters, history matters, demography matters, health and education matter, culture matters. But institutions are some of the strongest evidence we have. Rule of law, secure property rights, reliable administration, low corruption, and predictable rules can encourage investment, trust, and long-term planning. Where those are weak, development often struggles. Again, Korea is a dramatic example. Two societies with similar roots were subjected to very different political and economic systems, and the results diverged dramatically. That does not prove institutions explain everything. But it strongly shows that institutions can shape opportunities, incentives, security, nutrition, information, and daily life on an enormous scale. Culture matters too, but culture is not a frozen essence carried unchanged by a people through time. It changes, adapts, and interacts with institutions and opportunity. People respond to incentives, constraints, trauma, prosperity, repression, and education. A culture under war, censorship, and scarcity will not express itself in the same way as a culture under stability, openness, and growth. So what really makes peoples different? The most defensible answer is also the least satisfying to anyone looking for a single master key. Many things, interacting over time. Biology matters, but usually in more modest, conditional, and context-dependent ways than crude theories claim. Environment matters. History matters. Institutions matter. Health matters. Education matters. Culture matters. And categories themselves matter because the labels we use can clarify some patterns while distorting others. There is also a final source criticism to keep in mind. Genetics research can be genuinely useful. It can clarify ancestry, migration, and some medical risks. But it can also reinforce misleading labels if complex population patterns are forced into simple social boxes. Modern research, taken as a whole, tends to dissolve crude categories more often than it confirms them. That may be the most important lesson. Human group differences are real, but single-cause explanations are usually misleading and often used as if they settled questions they do not settle. The closer we look, the less humanity falls into clean boxes, and the more we see a species shaped by mixture, adaptation, contingency, and history. Subscribe, enable notifications, and suggest the next topic in the comments.